How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 6 of What If Deku Could Create His Own Quirk. And now, let's begin. Right before Stain could lick the blood on his sword, Izuku would use his telekinesis to stop Stain from moving at all. His arm would tense up, using immense power to keep Stain at bay. He didn't want Stain to reach his sword, as if he did, that would basically mark the end of Izuku's life. So Izuku would keep that sword as far away from Stain as possible, throwing it back, as he would then rush towards Stain, punching him right across the face. Falling to the ground, Stain would reach towards the sword, however Izuku would land on top of him, choking him out, as Stain would continuously try to reach for the sword, but would continually fail, each time just being shorter from the last, as Izuku would choke him out, also dragging him out of the alleyway. Finally, however, Stain would get leverage, kicking Izuku right in the gut, sending him backwards as he would make a run for the sword, which would then reveal Ida standing right there with the sword in his hand. Smiling, Ida would end up snapping the sword in half before throwing it up against the wall, as Izuku would then appear right behind Stain, punching him in the back of the head. As Stain would fall to the ground, Ida would stomp on his back. All of a sudden, however, Stain's nails would dig into Ida's skin, just digging so deep blood would start coming out of Ida's leg. Quickly, Stain would lick Ida's blood, causing Ida to be paralyzed once again. Ida would fall backwards, completely still, not able to move a single muscle. Suzuki would see this, he would end up jumping backwards, as Stain would end up smiling. Oh, as soon as you see my power working in real time, you all of a sudden jump backwards. Are you gonna be just a fake hero and run away, leaving your friend here to die? Or are you going to be a real hero and try to sacrifice your life to save someone else's? Let's see. Let's see what you're gonna do, Izuku. Stain would say with a menacing voice. Suzuki would rush towards Stain, going for a punch, over dodging his own punch actually, and then using his fire breath, breathing on right to Stain, as this would burn the top of Stain's head, burning his bandana. All of a sudden, however, a fire would spark with Izuku setting it out with his fire. However, with this fire, it would catch fire to Stain's bandana, who would then throw it to Izuku, landing right on his face, blinding him, as the fiery bandana would cover his eyes completely. With Izuku not able to see, he would end up tearing it off, only to reveal Stain flaunting the sword right in front of Izuku. And he would then lick the sword, paralyzing Izuku completely still. It is done, Stain would say, as all of a sudden a purplish portal would open up as a blue-haired person would step out of it. Good. Great job, Stain, he would say, walking over towards Izuku. Picking him up, he would place Quirk-canceling handcuffs around Izuku's hands, feet, and neck, dragging him over towards the portal, kicking him in. By the way, who's that kid? Oh, I don't know. I'm thinking about just letting him go. He is only a kid after all. They do tend to make dumb mistakes. But it doesn't really matter. So, what are we gonna do with Izuku there? He would say, motioning towards the portal, as Stain and Shigaraki would both walk through it. Well, I'm not sure, you would say, knocking out Izuku before dragging him over towards a dungeon, placing him inside the dungeon. Once there, they would both consider what they were planning on doing to Izuku. He does have quite the powerful quirk after all. A strength quirk, a fire quirk, a strength quirk, a fire quirk, what else? Telekinesis, and water quirk. It's quite the insane combo. However, we just have to see if his quirk can be taken away. All for One has never failed to take away a quirk before, Shigaraki would say. That's correct. A figure would stand from behind the shadows, saying. However, I don't feel like taking this boy's quirk just yet. You see, my arsenal of quirks is a bit maxed out right now. I have a telekinesis quirk, I have a fire quirk, I have a water quirk, and I have a strength quirk. There's really no need for me to take his own quirks, as they're not going to stack upon my own. Plus, I can almost guarantee they're weaker if he couldn't have beaten Stain. My own strength quirk can beat Stain with only one punch. So, I don't suppose taking his quirk would be the right course of action. I do suppose you're right, Shigaraki would say. We cut back to UA as Endeavor would walk into UA. As he would walk in, all of them would be staring at him as he would be walking in. I've made a mistake, he would say. What is that? Nezu would say. I let Izuku go out to fight on his own for the last day of the internships, and he was kidnapped. I was able to see it from a just camera on the side of the road. He got kidnapped by that blue-haired Shigaraki kid. What? Nezu would say before he would end up canceling the rest of the internships, bringing everyone back to UA, where they would and be told that dorms had been built and that they should now move in, as this would be given as a cover-up, just saying Izuku was sick, as he would then task All Might, Endeavor, and the rest of the heroes there to completely find Izuku, which was going to be a monstrous task. However, Endeavor did have one lead. Someone there had managed to luckily place a tracker on them, which happened to be Ida. Ida had a little flexibility in his wrist, and right before there he would manage to place a tiny tracker on the leg of Stain. So that tiny tracker would be able to show their location, which happened to be the exact location Izuku was in. However, Izuku was basically useless. He couldn't use any of his quirks, and he had quirk-canceling things all over his body, on his neck, on his hands, on his legs. He couldn't move his legs or wrists too much. Izuku would be sitting in a chair that would have locked him down, as he would end up reaching up his wrists, grabbing towards just the neck restraints on him. He would start finicking with one of the loose bolts on it before he would twist it out, as it would drop to the floor, making a banging sound. Izuku would then do it to another one, slowly but surely loosening up another bolt, doing it to another bolt, and then another and another, as finally it would fall down to the ground as Izuku could move his neck. Stretching it out, he would then end up moving down to his legs, untying his legs, doing the same strategy, as he would then slowly but surely stretch out his wrist to try to manage to reach some of the bolts, which luckily he could, loosening up the wrist restraints so much to the point he could take both of them off as well. With Izuku now free, he would now stand within the path of Shigaraki and a bunch of other people in the League of Villains hideout. However, before that could even happen, Shigaraki, along with All For One, would end up coming down towards the dungeon to speak with Izuku. As they would be coming down, Izuku would quickly place all of the restraints back on his body, as they would end up asking Izuku some questions. Izuku wouldn't answer them, as they would walk back frustrated, having not gotten any answers out of him. Finally, however, Shigaraki, not being the one to quit, would rush back downstairs after All For One would leave to speak with Izuku, probably to torture him, as All For One was adamant about not torturing Izuku. However, Shigaraki was adamant about torturing him. And so, with All For One gone, he could torture Izuku. And so he would rush down start his torturing. However, as Zuko's restraints loosened, he would stand up as all of the restraints would fall to the floor. Shigaraki seeing this, he would rush towards Izuku, reaching out his hand to decay part of Izuku. However, with his strength quirk, he would grab onto Shigaraki's arm, as he would end up bending it backwards. Shigaraki would yell in immense pain before falling down to the ground. As he would fall down to his knees holding his bent wrist, he would snap it back into place, running towards Zuko. You bastard, he would say, reaching out his hands, going for it again. However, Zuko's telekinesis would completely stop Shigaraki in his path. Not so fast, Shigaraki. Zuko would say, staring Shigaraki in his eyes, mocking him as if, "You're not going to be able to kill me, you know, or torture me. I'm far superior than you in strength. And since you don't have any Nomu things here, you're not going to be able to beat me," you would say, as all of this Audenta's massive hole would be blown right through the wall, as there would reveal All Might, Endeavor, and some of the top heroes standing behind the shiny yellow #1 hero. They would all stand there before rushing in, tackling Shigaraki to the ground. As All Might would stand there, looking around, knowing that something was off. All of the Sun Gray portals would completely surround them as Nomus would pile out of them. Best Genius would rush over, grabbing Izuku before rushing out of there. "You're lucky, kid. You're lucky you didn't get hurt during that entire ordeal. Now I'll just have to take you back to UA," he would say as Izuku would fight. "No! Let me help them." "Sorry, kid, but that's just too dangerous. You almost died to stay in," according to the words of Endeavor. Izuku would just be in frustration, not being able to help those heroes, as the heroes would end up fighting those Nomus, as All Might would end up having to take care of All for One. As Izuku would end up being sent back towards the UA dorms, we end up seeing All Might fighting All for One, as all the other heroes would be fighting the Nomus. All for One, knowing the heroes were coming, would have sent all of the other members of the League of Villains elsewhere, leaving just him and the Nomus to fight. As they would all be fighting, we end up seeing All Might just putting it All for One on the ropes, as some heroes had managed to defeat their crowd of Nomus and would start pushing back All for One further and further. All for One would start struggling quite a bit, not being able to just hold on to any of his strength anymore. He was quite the old man, as his immortality quirk, while yes, was just quite the showcase and was quite the powerful quirk, it really didn't help keep up his strength. He had the strength of an old man, and that's why he had so many different types of strength quirks. He needed a strong strength quirk to be able to even just be a fraction of a human, just a normal human in their prime. As Izuku, well, not Izuku, All for One, after aging for hundreds of years, his body had started to grow weaker. His immortality quirk didn't stop the age from growing. So with him just getting weaker and weaker, so too would his body. So too would his body, his organs, as he wouldn't be able to keep up. And also with that injury he had been blown with by All Might, then it was basically just seeing that the next fight he had with All Might would be his last. And it didn't help that all the top 10 heroes were there. And so All for One would falling down as the sheer power, All Might and the rest of the top 10 heroes would accidentally kill All for One before he would even be able to just send his power off to someone else. And with that, All for One's legacy would end. Izuku and his classmates would be huddled around a TV, all staring as All for One would end up being defeated by all these top 10 heroes. As Izuku would stare at it with a glare on his face, as he would end up just gritting his teeth and clenching his fists. "I should have been there," he would mutter under his breath. And that is where part 6 of What If Deku Had Creation comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy it, and if you did, please consider subscribing, as it really does help this channel out, and you can even be notified when the other parts of this series do end up coming out. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.